quite sunny, but there's actually a lot of clouds in the air, so maybe that's a hint that the rain is possibly coming. And what was going on today? Actually, a lot of interesting and different stuff. I guess the first one I read, which was kind of neat, a lot of the drones in terms of things like autonomous flights and all that, mostly do with things like drone delivery, for example. But how about this one in terms of drones trying to be smarter in doing cinematography? This one here says CineMPC, an algorithm to enable autonomous drone-based cinematography. Emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, algorithms, mobile robots, and unmanned aerial vehicles could enhance practices in a variety of fields, including cinematography. In recent years, many cinematographers and entertainment companies specifically began exploring the use of UAVs to capture high-quality aerial video footage. Researchers at University of Zaragoza and Stanford University recently created CineMPC, a computational tool that can be used for autonomously controlling a drone's onboard video cameras. And you can see in the video, it seems like the hope is essentially the drone will be smart enough to implement all these best practices to capture the mood and emotion that you're going for when it comes to taking video. For example, I guess things maybe like rule of thirds and all that. Although from looking at this, I believe it's computer generated in terms of this example. But this could be something in the future too. You don't want to take all the time to do this and that, just send it up there, here, get the best shot possible. Which I would imagine would be great for autonomous drones. Let's just say something like the Skydio one, you just throw it up in the air. So you'll have the obstacle avoidance and as well, I guess, smart enough to try to take the best video. Makes you wonder if we're soon gonna see, I guess, an all robot production, literally everything from the cast to the crew. And that's interesting reading this one. It dealt with that bill where apparently I guess the government wanted to pass here in Canada that would regulate social media sites and make them more like broadcasters, for example. And after a ton of criticism, it seems they're kind of backing out. It says here, after criticism over Bill C10, Liberal vows to make it clear CRTC won't regulate social media posts. In a nutshell, to my understanding, it was essentially they removed a clause which would make it anybody literally that published anything online could be constituted as, I guess, a broadcaster, even if you're just publishing a video and stuff for fun or just commenting on whatever's happening around you event-wise. And it says here, the Liberal government is promising to change Broadcasting Bill C10 following a week of controversy that an amendment to the legislation infringes Canadian rights to free expression. Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault said a new amendment would make it crystal clear that social media posts by Canadians would not be subject to regulation by the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission. Guilbeault said the government wants to, quote, make sure the content that people upload on social media won't be considered as programming under the Broadcasting Act and that it won't be regulated by the CRTC. Critics who sounded the alarm over the bill expressed caution over Guilbeault's move. Can you imagine that if that was actually true? Where you could be talking about a subject, I don't know what it is, like politics or something like that, and then if the government doesn't agree with it, it'll like, oh, you're a broadcaster, we're gonna take it down. It could be anybody. That would be ludicrous. Because there was a point brought up too where you can't do that nowadays in this way in social media because this is how people communicate. So it is kind of, if you think about it, stopping them from having their conversations and stuff like that. And the interesting thing about this, I thought, was how in these articles they say, okay, they're going to change it, they'll make it crystal clear. There's still a lot of groups and people that are upset about this and they're still going to, in a sense, raise awareness about it to show you what this could mean. Maybe it's just a way to say, hey, this is going extremely overboard and they want to make sure it never happens again because you can see all these advertisements and stuff like that for people, I guess, holding events. And all that reminds me of this other story I read where apparently in Colombia they were introducing new taxes because they wanted to raise, I guess, more money, and wow, so much people went against it. And with that, eventually they're like, okay, we will withdraw this, but people are still making a big deal about it. This one says, Colombia tax reform protests continue as president withdraws bill. Finance minister quits. Unfortunately, in this case too, it sounds like it got violent. It says at least 17 have been reported dead so far in major clashes between the demonstrators and the police across different cities. And more details in terms of what this was about, it says the tax reforms contested as hiking financial pressure on low and middle income groups was shelved after widespread opposition and angst from the opposition lawmakers in Colombia and the citizens, many of whom demanded the leveling of sales tax on utilities. Colombia's finance minister Alberto Carrasquilla resigned earlier yesterday following 5 days of outrage, which included riots and violent clashes, as citizens demanded scrapping of 19% of sales tax on gasoline and the government's expansion of the country's tax base. I just can imagine too, just during these times that places were having lockdowns and all that, people weren't agreeing with government decisions. This is probably the last straw, so to speak. So yeah, I can easily imagine why there were whatever hundreds of thousands of people basically protesting this, to the point where they have to say, okay, we're gonna take this back. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but it kind of makes me think in these situations, maybe those people that are in charge, they're too much of like a paper pusher. They look at some data and all that, and then it's like, okay, let me adjust this and so forth, and yeah, it should make sense, whereas they don't really factor in how it actually really is overall. And that brings it back to the story about the C10 bill, and it makes you think, in that sense, it makes sense why a lot of people would still be protesting about it, just to make sure, for example, hey, you better not even think about something like that in the future. It's kind of a tricky thing too, because let's just say they pass something saying clearly, okay, individuals or whatever, they're not considered as broadcasters. But even nowadays, a lot of people argue new media, if that's what you want to say, are just average people. So what if you go to a court or something like that, and then they say, well, this person or whatever is a news media. Look, they go out, they do this, they film that. It's a news report. So yeah, you're gonna be abided by these standards now, because as an example, remember with Transport Canada, in terms of separating a commercial and recreational person, literally, they said anybody who publishes, for example, a video on YouTube or something like that, that would be considered commercial. How ludicrous is that? Even if someone's just posting pictures of a vacation online for their family to see, they're like, nope, that's a commercial operation. I remember examples where people were saying, hey, we're just publishing like what, videos and pictures for family members to see, so they can see like the sunny day and all that. What's wrong with that? And then their response to Transport Canada was something along the lines of, that's a commercial operation. You are publishing your material for educational purposes, which makes you a business. Like there, most people will say, what in the world? That makes absolutely no sense. That's not a business. So it'll be actually really interesting to see how this actually turns out too with that law. Will there actually be a lot of people protesting it as well? Because at many times it just goes way too far, and I think this will be the example of it. Recognizes me. She got the camera. Yeah. Action camera. Alright, see you guys later.